back with another episode of the Danay Garcia podcast. This time I have with me Joshua Coombes. Joshua, thank you for being here. It's hard to introduce you, so I just want to start with something that really got my attention. I just love your message of do something for nothing. I know you have a book about this. I just want you to tell me a little bit of what is do something for nothing. What is that a mindset? Is that kind of like, a message? How do you make that work? How do you come up with this lifestyle that you created for yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out in the first place. I'm glad I picked up your DM because, I'm really grateful always for the space to talk about it, Danay. So thank you for your work with the podcast. So do something for nothing. It's a good question. I think over the years it's developed really into a mantra, of the way that I want to try and live. How it began, like logistically, was really trying to think of some words at the beginning when I started doing the work that I do, which is I go out and I cut hair on the street for men and women who are, unsheltered, unhoused, experiencing homelessness, however you want to describe that. And that started in the UK, where I'm sitting talking to you now, even though I travel, and I've traveled a lot over the last 8 years since this began in 2015. So, when I started to do this, it came from a place of feeling really helpless about this problem that I think all of us see on such a regular basis now. It's almost become normalized, it's become part of the scenery of any place that we live in. And I think like a lot of people, there's a part of you that knows that that's not and shouldn't be normal in places where we could do so much better to pick up the level of care for people who are sometimes literally living with rats and the trash under some highway somewhere. So I was walking around in London and I'd see people and, this feeling of feeling overwhelmed and feeling like I can't do anything as one person changed one day when I offered somebody a haircut. And the more I started to do this, the more I got to know people's stories, the more all of these misconceptions around homelessness got dissolved. And I needed to start to share that. So I started to post with permission on Instagram, these before and after photos, which can sometimes be these really big transformations, because obviously it might not have been a while since somebody's gone into a salon or a barbershop. And do something for nothing came actually after a few months, because it was like, okay, well, this is about my time. I'm cutting hair for somebody. It's great when I see someone, look in the mirror at the end and feel happier and more confident. But really what's happened is just this exchange of time with no money, passed between one another. And I think it's really important, to have that in certain areas of your life. And I wanted to create a space for other people to get involved. So each post I'd leave at the end, do something for nothing as a hashtag. And that's how it grew and developed into more people doing this in different places. And kind of took on a life of its own. And I guess to just finish with that, what happened for me and how I kind of carved this life that I'm leading now. To be honest, it was not some plan where I had like structure to it. It was just, I left my job after about 6 months of doing this because I became just so engaged in the people that I was meeting, men and women from all different walks of life. I was learning so much on a personal level about just one another, like the way that we, the human condition in a way, the way that we experience certain things in our life and what can happen to a person and the emotional side of it, really, learning more about, through other people. I think even though it's their story, it's all of our story, because there was these themes that exist in all of our life, like grief and pain and things that have happened to a person that they didn't have any control over, or even if it was mistakes and bad choices. Like, I don't think anyone listening to this is going to be somebody who doesn't make mistakes in their life, but usually it was the fact that somebody didn't have a support network. So I started to transition from working in the salon, and then one day I decided to leave my job, and that wasn't because I was sitting on like a trust fund or any savings. It was just like, this feels good and I want to keep doing it. And I just started to do this more, and that's how Do Something for Nothing grew. And I started to give talks about my work and start to do other projects. Yeah.
Did you ever wanted to be a hairstylist? Do you always, is that something that was always in you to style hair?
No, Actually,
What?
not at all. No, it was really not. And actually, it's so interesting because it wasn't anything I'd thought about apart from one day I was 20, I'm 35 now. I was 24 and I was playing music for a long time when I was younger and I
Oh,
was
you're a
in,
musician.
yeah, I play guitar and I was in one punk band that lasted for a while with some good friends. And then I was in another band that was really, I was kind of helping out on their tours. But anyway, so and I loved it. Like music is still just a big part of my life. But I got to a point in my mid-20s where, I was in a punk band, so we weren't earning any money. Like it was for the fun. But I got really sick of working in bars and pubs over here, you'd call it. So I was looking for a new start and something I could sort of, I don't know, start again and something I could earn some money. And I walked past the salon one day and I saw this
What?
guy outside and he was checking this woman's hair in the natural light outside. And I just felt this moment with him and his client where I saw how into it he was and how it was so creative as well. It was this really cool haircut. And I think for me, hairdressing for a long time, it just, yeah, the only time I'd done anything with it before was in the back room before for friends when we were on tour. Like sometimes I'd take my clippers with me and I'd cut my friend's hair in the back room before we played like that night in some shitty
That's
little
so
venue
funny.
somewhere in Hamburg, Germany, and I'd like shave somebody's head or whatever. And but that was like I never thought I'd take that into like my career. So yeah, it was just this moment one day. It wasn't for this real love for the industry. I know. I feel like I fell into it, but then once I got into the salon and that environment, I was like, of course I fell into this because I've always been like a people person.
Mhm.
I don't believe there's any chance to anything we do really. I mean, of course, there's willpower and there's manifesting and motivation to do what you want to do in your life,
Yeah.
but there's these moments where it's there's no chance, and I saw that, and I'm glad I walked in and asked for a chance, because it really changed my world after that, because I enjoyed hairdressing from the beginning, but to be honest, it really humbled me because I was thinking, I can play guitar, how hard can it be. And I was like, and I really got humbled by the whole experience because, when you're training,
Mhm.
somebody's watching you, the person you're working on is watching you, and it's really, people are really wrapped up in this sometimes because they want to look good. So you're
Oh
kind of
yeah.
in, this position where you can easily make a mistake and get something wrong and leave them in tears. So yeah, it was just like the whole thing, maybe being a bit older too. It was a very important part of my life. And then once I got past that stage and got some confidence, I realized how much I enjoyed the conversation,
Hmm.
listening, the kind of the social interaction and that side of it.
I was looking at some of your posts on Instagram, and I've noticed you keep such a very calm. Or maybe you have learned to be so calm when, in this case, a person, a homeless, it's crying while you're cutting the hair, because for the first time, maybe in a really long time, they haven't been, touched or taken care of, and all that. Uh, which is really interesting when you think of a hairstylist. We all go through it internally when we go to a place that we want to feel better. How does it feel to affect someone in a very profound way while you are actually doing your work? And what do you think somebody cries? Is it does it have to do with value, like you are giving them the value they deserve? Is that where what do they tell you in that when that is happening, when that is hitting them?
Mm. Yeah, well, thanks for, I think it's an important observation, and it might not be one that a lot of people make when they see, my work from the outside, but I think
It must
the
be really
way,
hard.
yeah, the way that I feel to answer that question best for me is, again, it becomes a bit more universal. Like maybe everyone listening to this or watching this can remember that time in their life where you almost had permission to break down and let out your emotion. And usually that's because there's a space to be able to do so. Maybe it could be
Mm.
with a friend or a family member, but also maybe with a complete stranger too, maybe in a sharing circle, in some kind of, different models of healing. And obviously when you feel like you can drop those barriers and release that tension, I think that's
Mm.
probably the reason why when I'm cutting somebody's hair, it's not all the time, but people are there sometimes so constricted and so hardened. And, that comes from being really downtrodden by the world. I mean, not only sometimes can you feel invisible and forgotten about by society. And I'm not trying to just paint a picture of somebody to give them pity, because I also think it's really important not to remember that sympathy is actually quite useless for people. It's better to try and build a bridge of empathy than it is to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry for you and your situation, because I try and go out and I treat people with dignity and respect. And I show up and I'm like, I don't know anything about your life, but I want to learn and I want to sit here. And even if we hang out and we talk about music or films, it's whatever, like, this person's as worthy. For me, it's a level playing field when I go out and do this. But to answer your question, I think that when I'm cutting somebody's hair, there's a level of trust that you have to maybe give up when you've said yes. Not everybody wants a haircut, but when it happens, that when it begins, that process, people have to just relax that little bit into it, and kind of,
let
they're
go.
still sat, let go. They're still sat where they are, either on some curb somewhere or underneath a highway, or, in some, part of town where there's tents or wherever I might end up. But there's a difference between hopefully feeling that somebody's there just to I don't know, to give you some time. And I see when people do break down like that, it doesn't happen all the time. I've got a lot better myself at just sitting with that and not having to rescue that emotion in that moment, because it's not really that helpful just to try and mop up the tears straight away or put a plaster over it. There's something incredibly important about whatever that release is, whatever purge that is. Maybe it's from tears, maybe it's through just talking about it, but I don't want to try and run too quickly to put out that without letting it flow, without letting someone just feel those emotions. So, I just try and sit with it, no matter what people are feeling. It can be really hard, obviously, to hear what certain people are going through, but I think through my own journey, I've started making it less about me. Because if I start feeling like, oh my God, God, that's so painful, that's so hard to hear, it's so difficult. And I receive a lot of messages like that sometimes, not loads, but there's a percentage of the interactions I have with people on social media where people might say, like, God, how do you hear all these stories and it doesn't affect you, or does it affect you? And, if this was me, I'd just be crying myself to sleep every night. And I understand that, because naturally our heart goes out to people, right? My heart goes out to you. But I think for me, it's like, it's not that I don't care that I'm not doing that, or I'm not hugging somebody straight away when they're crying. It's just that it's part of life, and I think to sit with the suffering and to sit with that polarity of what is joy sometimes and laughter and us having fun. I want to be able to sit and receive that and hold space for that. And honestly, that's taken time for me. In the beginning, it wasn't that easy.
No, I can totally imagine. It's hard.
Yeah.
Especially you're not trained to you're trained to do hair. You're not trained to you're not trained to deal with emotions.
Zero training. Yeah. Exactly. That's so true. It's a good point, because I wasn't. I was going into, for me, I was, stepping out on,
for a service. You were giving a service.
Exactly. And I hadn't really intended to, learn as much as I have.
Much more.
Right. Yeah. And learn so much about, I guess, more just different modalities of healing and helping people through that in different kind of ways that I do now in my life, and also learn more about my own journey through that and the things we carry, the things that we carry. It's like, I think I've just realized that honestly, Danay, I feel that the more I do this work, the more I realize how there's this like big missing piece to what would help so many more people. Because we oftentimes with homelessness, we have this socioeconomic conversation where we're just talking about housing, and we're just talking about, of course, all these really important fundamental things like healthcare and basic kind of
human needs,
improvement of the conditions somebody's in when they're on the street. Because of course, like, that's got to be paramount. That has to be, especially in cities where the winter it drops to sub-zero temperatures, and then people aren't even going to see the other side of that winter. People can't even make it through because people literally die on the streets. So now I've addressed that. The bit that I see that's really missing is like the holistic conversation that should come with this. It's like you can give somebody a key and shelter, and even in this ideal world, which doesn't exist, where they go and get their own apartment, you go and you hand a key to someone, and you say, here's an apartment. We're going to come around with the job advisor person tomorrow. We're going to get you a job and a house. But without the part where somebody's actually had a chance to try and heal some of the wounds that they've been carrying around with them, it's going to be really difficult. And, you know, people could say, well, pull up your socks and get on with it. That's what I'm doing, you know? And it's like, okay, that's one side of the argument, and I understand that, but it's not. We know now, like the studies, the research, the books. There's so many wonderful authors, writers, researchers who have already found the correlation between like how we're not just these beings that need food, shelter, and the basics and the bare necessities. Like we need connection in our life. We need like these things we're evolved for, which is to feel part of a community, to feel like a sense of belonging and kind of a sense of meaning in your life and a sense of purpose. And that used to happen more in the roles that we'd have, you know, in a smaller community, because everyone would have a designated role and a purpose in some way. But in modern society, whether that be Austin, Texas, where you're sitting now, or New York or LA or London, where I am a lot, you know, if you're completely removed from the rest of society and you're this human, it's not, we're not meant to live like alone in the way that we do. So, you know, to circle back, what I'm saying is like, we have to, I think, really moving forward, think of way more holistic, way more therapeutic ways that we can create systems to help people to, you know, offer support, advice, to be able to work through some of the things they're going through, as well as being able to find shelter for people, you know, because I think that'll be what really helps. You know,
what I have learned, I did a little bit of, I interviewed a few homeless in Austin, and it was very interesting to see how their world is so separated from society, and how I would talk to them on Congress, and he would say, you see that woman, she walks every day, she's always in a rush. Because they're standing like very still in their spot, they actually know, it's like a neighborhood, like they create a world, and she's always rushing. And you know, that guy, he's always late, and it's like I don't have those problems, and I have other problems, but the problems of rushing life, I don't have them. And I think what you're saying, and what I'm getting, is that when you really go on a level to a human that you never met before, that is really living another, you know, reality, whichever one it is. It could be on the streets, it could be in the Amazon, it could be anywhere, it could be in space. We're talking like a different reality.
Yeah.
And you do it with your heart open, without anything in return, where you realize by just going there, being brave enough to just go in that level, you receive 3 times more. But you're transforming and you don't even know it. You're actually changing more than they are. Like they're really changing your life in a way that, you know, when you say do something for nothing, it's do something because the return is not nothing, it's everything.
Right. And you know, that's
right?
The funny thing with this. It's so true. You've hit the nail on the head, because it's actually
nothing.
It's not as simple as that. It's nothing when you look at the monetary side.
Correct.
The economical thing is like do something for nothing, because you've got your time and you can use that, right? But do something for nothing, no, because you're going to get, as a byproduct of this, naturally, you're going to get so much out of it for you. And people, I don't know about in America, I think there's a different relationship maybe, but in the UK, I think we maybe have a bit more of like oh, well, you know, like if I was to say that, like I'm going out for me, people would be like, well, that's not the reason why you should go out to help somebody. You know, there's this kind of like strange, I don't know, like
something is wrong with you.
Something's wrong. Yeah. And maybe it's not, maybe I'm being unfair, but maybe it's just perhaps an opinion of a certain level of humility. And I understand that you should go out to to be of service and not expect anything in return. But I often talk about what you do get in return, because yeah, that's not the reason why you go out. I'm not going to go out there and be like, oh, this is just for me and I'm going to make myself feel good. But it's not about just I'm the helper and I have not, and somebody I'm reaching out to is this charity case, because that's so old school. It's so weird if you're asking me. Like, yes, I have a certain level of comfort, but to be honest, like, yeah, I'm also somebody who each year is just about making enough to continue what I'm doing. But relatively speaking, I have a fabulous like life and level of comfort, so I'm never going to discount that. But I don't want to go out and treat somebody like they're just there to be helped, and I am the person who's up here and they're down there. And
No.
I don't believe in that. I don't think it's like, a human being is like worthy of my respect, first of all. And then of course I'm going to address all of the other issues that are happening. But there might be something you can learn from that person in front of you. And I'm sure from your stories, from
Yeah.
what you said, I saw, some of your work, and it's not those conversations you must have had, and similar to the conversations I have when I'm in different places. People have taught me so much. There's so much wisdom there. And actually there's almost like an exchange, because like you said, you're going to meet people sometimes who, yeah, actually they're not homeless, but they're rentless,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
actually like, they're in this place where like, I don't want those worries. I don't want those things.
Mm-hmm.
And someone could say, well, that's some lazy bum or whatever who doesn't want to work. But it's like, well, tell me maybe he's less stressed out. I don't know, because
Yes.
because I find sometimes what, the way that we live, and when I'm down on someone's level, when I'm cutting hair, I also get that view of the world. I'm like,
Of course. And it's
what are we,
amazing.
yeah, and it's like, don't you ever get those moments you're like, what are we? I understand the world, it needs to tick, and we all
Mm-hmm.
have our jobs, but when you are somewhere like New York, and or wherever you are, any city, I'm like, we're all buying into this thing, which is great. But I'm just saying, you do need to
Yeah.
take a moment sometimes to go like, we're moving faster in our minds than I think we're supposed to. We haven't we when How many times of the day are we really present? How often are we really smelling the roses? Because
Correct.
it's work, it's the next job, but then it's your lunch meet with your friends, and even if with your friends, there you go, and then you're on the phone on the subway home, and you can spend a week without really going, huh, how do I feel? Like, how do I feel? Who am I? What's my, am I going to tune into like this kind of soul that I have beyond just like
Mm-hmm.
this human experience? Like, what's my soul's path here? Like, where am I stepping in that direction that feels like authentic to me? And people might listen to that and they think it's all this woo stupid stuff, or maybe not, because I'm sure you have lovely listeners. But for me, I can only, for me on a personal level, I'm on a trajectory where I only want to become more in tune to my inner voice, not the
Mm-hmm.
one that's just the role or the status or what I'm playing in my life. It's like, it's not easy, because, like I said, it comes with, maybe to begin with, less security. It comes with making decisions from your heart rather than ones that are just going to maybe make you more financially safe or secure. But I'd much prefer to make and decide what I want to do from that place, because I feel more connected and I feel more, yeah, joy in my life. And I feel like it's hard, because I get, especially if you have a family to feed, this is
Yeah.
very different. I'm from a privileged place speaking about this too. Like my
Mm.
mum, I often think, it's like, my mum had me and my sisters by the time she was 22. Actually, no,
Um,
25, my youngest is, but me and my older sister, by the time she was 22, yeah. And like, she was a single parent and she was working two jobs to make it happen. And
mm,
she had food on the table every single night. And like, she didn't have time to do what I'm doing now.
mhm.
Like, so I get it. If you have dependents, you have people who are caring about you. Yeah, you may not have the privilege to decide to tap into what yourself underneath that. So I get there's complications, but you do have disposable income and you do have maybe a bit of time in your hands, I feel like there's a lot you can learn from going out and speaking to people who, yeah, maybe in a different position, and people whose life might look really different than your own. It turns out, even if it's that guy who's clearly living on the street and maybe from the outside might look really different, like, it's all the surface. It's all just the superficial. There's just a human there who usually has the same needs as you do, and Yeah, I think the point from your question is just I learned so much, so it's not for nothing. You're right, that's true. It's definitely not for nothing.
Oh
So I'm
no.
just I'm gonna cross it out. I have my book here, and after we speak, I'm gonna put a permanent marker line through that bit. But
No, but I understand the message, but I also understand the behind the message
yeah,
because I understand human behavior and how connected we are, but on the superficial level we don't see it, cultures or being on the streets.
mm-hmm.
The one thing I have learned, I tell stories for a living.
Mm-hmm.
I thrive on it. I think I look for stories everywhere I go, so I don't have a problem to
Mm-hmm.
talk to people, especially strangers. I feel very
Yeah,
comfortable.
yeah,
It's actually it's a safe place for me.
yeah.
Um,
Me
and
too.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and the one thing I know for a fact is that in that journey of like the search of the unknown,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you're really discovering yourself, the unknown part of you that you didn't know you have.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you knew you were going to become this person when you 10 years ago, when you started when you changed your life career by accident, just because you gave it a
Mm-hmm.
shot. Like, were you in an internal search? Was there something inside you that was something is there, but I don't
Maybe
know how
it's
to
a
change it? Because I feel like sometimes we know something is off, but we
uh-huh.
don't know how to change it. We start reading books and we start doing
Yeah.
whole. What I have learned is to like be in the service of others, help me deal with
Mm.
my stuff. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I
I
think.
feel less alone with in the search of
Mm.
things in
My
the
God. Yeah.
unknown. I feel less
Yeah.
alone with strangers sometimes.
Yeah, God, I'm with you 100%. It's amazing when you can feel, even if you are alone, say in a big city, I don't feel so alone anymore because the interactions I have with strangers, I know I can still be open
Of
to the interactions of all the human beings around me rather than just being in my little tunnel, my little
mhm.
mouse trail following my thing. So to that, what you're saying, I think is a really beautiful thing to be able to like not feel alone where you go because yeah, because you can speak to whoever and be, and that's beautiful, Um, yeah, to answer your question about me and what kind of this, I guess, part of me thinks like, no, I didn't think I'd be here because maybe I was a lot more conscious to my emotions, probably, still very much in a certain place where I was like, I was always somebody who was very social. I always cared about people. Like, actually, I knew that I really always cared about people. And as you said, stories. And I was always compassionate towards people. I mean, not to go off on too much of a like a side road here, but the thing with music is, especially the music that I got into, which first of all was post punk in like the early noughties, but then I went back to all the 70s, late 70s punk movement and bought a load of records and found some friends who felt the same. Even though on the face of it, it's about kind of maybe anarchy and kicking against the system and maybe spikes and zips and Mohicans. Really, punk and that movement was about coming together and fighting for a cause. It was about actually accepting people who might be on the fringes. It was
Wow.
about putting your arm around people who, might be from a broken home or might be being, hit around by one of their parents or people who just were struggling. For me, I was one of those people, school and that experience for me. If I think about it now too, when I was in what we call primary school here, I was
Uh-huh.
quite severely bullied when I was about 12 years
Oh.
old. And to the point where I was probably having a fight pretty much every day. And I fell out with the popular kid. We were best friends. And overnight, it kind of just went a bit crazy. So I think back to that part of my life too. And I realize now that I kind of ended up being on the fringes. And
Mm.
my new pals were the kid who, yeah, his mum was, a heroin addict. And the Turkish kid across the school who, was probably not accepted in the same way that like maybe we were. So I learned a lot through my own experiences in my life as a young person, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe what that feels like. I think I maybe pushed away for a long time, but in my adult life, I'm realizing that maybe that's quite had quite a big effect on me, and maybe the work I'm doing now in many ways, and
Interesting.
also music and what that kind of gave me and that community to also, if you're weird, you're in. That's what punk's about. Come on in, like, So I was never somebody who had this certain judgment around, people experiencing homelessness
That
or
makes
anything
perfect
like that.
sense.
Yeah, yeah, and
It's
then
all connected.
exactly, it is all connected, and I think that now I see it clearer than I ever have before through my own self work, how it's all connected, and then actually to be really vulnerable. I think sometimes it takes your own. I didn't go down this path of starting to read more and needing to find
Mm,
what my inspiration was. It took my own life experience, and another part of my trajectory was, I became very depressed in my mid-20s. And the reason for that was a long relationship came to an end. And even though I was
mm,
quite young, I'd been with this person for quite a few years, and I really hurt them in quite a,
mm,
a bad way. Like I kind of betrayed them, caused them a
mhm,
lot of pain. I
mm,
didn't know how to communicate how I really felt. So instead,
mm,
I burnt that relationship to the ground. And the hurt I caused them after the fact, it it took a tremendous toll on me, the guilt and the feelings. And I'm of course not making myself out as the victim in that story, but the byproduct of that was having to deal with that
wow.
myself for probably a good year in quite a really dark place myself. I really
Mhm.
kind of couldn't back it up with going like, oh, I don't care about that. It really took its toll on me. So much to the point that, yeah, I was like, I remember once really didn't I really got in a difficult place in my mind, like that I couldn't really crawl out of on my own. And yeah, I remember I was driving my car and I drank some beers up on this kind of place you go and you sit and do that and drive my car super fast. And I really didn't care. I really
Wow.
didn't care about anyone or anything. And I was shouting at God or whatever you want to call it, the power that is bigger than you. And yeah, and I kind of flipped my car pretty much like into this
Oh,
ditch. And I just remember there was something seminal that kind of happened there for me, which was like, and I haven't really spoke about this before, so it's interesting. It's kind of come out now, but I just remember afterwards, I was like, oh, like you've got to change. This is a turning, like you have to change because you do want to be here. And
oh,
you
oh, yeah.
and like and you
Wow.
and you're also being so hard on yourself and you have to find self-forgiveness through this
Yeah.
process. And I think when I came out of that period of my life, it kind of was when all this stuff started I needed to find more meaning, more kind of like connection
Mm,
with people. I felt like the things that I was perhaps doing before, which carried on for a while into my 20s, like going out and getting wasted and, each weekend having like this, but it started
mhm.
to level out and I started to find these moments with people and started to do what I was doing, around 27. So yeah, the reason I talk about that is maybe people have some similar experiences where you've been to the bottom of the barrel within your emotional state, your mind, and I think also perhaps there's a level of empathy there. I know what it feels like when I'm talking to people who also,
Yes.
even though it's very different
Mm.
and there's no comparisons in this world, but it's like what it feels like to just lose hope completely.
Yeah,
And it
the
happens for
situation
everybody
is
for different
different.
reasons. Yeah.
The situation is different, but the pain is the same. Hope is
Mm.
hope everywhere. I mean, the reason why
Yeah.
somebody lose hope, it's different than yours, but the feeling of feeling hopeless is the same feeling, and that's something we
Mm.
can connect to. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I know how you feel because we got there in different
Mhm.
through different tracks,
Yeah.
but it's we
But it's,
we
yeah.
got there
Yeah.
just
Right.
like
Right.
with different tracks, different
Right.
ways, and I think you know everybody that it's interesting. I hear you talk and I have this image. It's like I feel like you are giving a service to people, but it's like your service in terms of cutting the hair, but you're
Mhm.
really doing it's like a piece of you is there in each one of
Yeah.
those souls. There's one of it's a piece of you that connects to that human
Yeah.
that is sharing or putting themselves out there for you to cut. You're like taking care of that,
Of course. And
right?
because I am also just a piece of this whole thing, I mean, like I need this in my own life too.
This whole thing,
So it's
yes.
like I'm not I'm not doing, and you ask me what does do something for nothing mean? A lot of the times I actually say it's just a reminder, because this is not, I didn't make this up. This is not new. This is just some words that mean something that people do every day. You know what I mean? Every single day when
Mhm.
people have the time, presence, and they have their heart open to one another. Sometimes that's just in your nuclear family. It might just be your family you're looking out for, your friends, because whatever, maybe that's because you haven't got any more time, or maybe it's the way that we live in the West a lot of the time. But I think when you step out and beyond the walls of your own family, there's so many people, who are doing amazing things every single day, even in those small moments that don't get reported on the news. So do something for nothing is just like a my branded version of being human and what's inherent to be human. But it's not like I'm owning it. It's just like, you have these,
Don't
different
have
expressions.
expectations.
Yeah. So it's like, that's it. It's just a reminder of something that is in all of us. My version of that's a haircut, but it's just when you can, keeping your, just trying to like put more value and honoring part of yourself that is already there, which is like, yeah, this part that actually I do think looks at another human and can see them for what they are, which is way more similar than you. Now I don't see it like I'm stood on the other side of the river to a person. Like, we are the river,
Oh, yeah, we're swimming the
and
same freaking river. We're going
yeah,
down all together.
and
And
yeah, and
this,
I have to check myself on that. Danai, where I have to really check myself on that now in my own life is it's okay for me to practice that, like to a certain, you know, group of people. And in fact, I think to most people that I'd meet, but then I see somebody who's maybe, I don't know, like driving like a car, really slick, like fast car with really loud music down the street, and they're parking it and going up to their penthouse. And I'm like, look, if I want to embody words like empathy and compassion, it's got to be in full spectrum. And I
yeah.
really believe that. It's no good me going, okay, well, because whatever the superficial is, whatever the surface, it can look like this high flying career and
Mm-hmm.
multi-million-dollar mansion. There's just this person who was once
Yeah.
a baby and
Mm-hmm.
now is this big adult. And I'm pretty sure they're a product of their environment. And
Of
I'm pretty
course.
sure that even sometimes, like I go and speak in schools quite a bit. And sometimes it's like state schools, like I went to that kind of place, which are more underfunded. But a lot of the time, it's like when they have budget to bring in speakers. And it's quite like, like some really good schools in the UK. And I've done a few in America. And I feel sometimes with the students, the pupils who I'm speaking to, I feel the weight, the heavy weight of their career on them already. And they're
Uh-huh.
14 years old, maybe, 16 years old, 17, 18, whatever. It may be from their parents, I'm not judging, but obviously that's a very common story, parents kind of sculpting the children their image of what they should become and what they should be without even being who they are yet. They're just this
Mm-hmm.
this this young person who hasn't even figured it out yet. Or just society culturally, like having to become what's expected of you by a larger group of people. And even people from really privileged background. I could be talking to someone who is going back to their 6 cars and huge house somewhere. Like, I'm telling you, they're like, I don't know whether I'd wish that upon anyone, like feeling like they're not in control of their own life and their authenticity, and feeling that pressure to succeed so much by that early age. Like, that's a such a sad thing. So, whoever you're looking at in this kind of this moment, I'm just trying to, I still get, triggered like we all do. And I have, my own stuff, but I'm trying to just try and see beyond that as much as I can, and just realize like, yeah, everyone's where they're supposed to be. And my job also with this work is not to point my finger at anyone and say, this is how you should be living. This is how you should be doing you and your life. Like, I'm not into that and I never will be. It's like, perhaps the message is something closer to, hey, I used to feel like shit about many of the things in the world that I see that I don't like,
Mm-hmm.
that make me feel like, like not good about, whether it's homelessness or refugee crisis or climate change we're facing. And it's very easy as one person to become fatigued by these issues and stay stuck to the couch or the chair you're sitting on because you've become paralyzed.
Yes.
So I think my message is something closer to like you you can focus on all of those things, or you can focus on the things you can do.
Correct.
And you can start getting busy living and being active and doing whatever feels right for you within that space. And it's like, you might not know how to solve homelessness tomorrow. You might not know how to slow down CO2 emissions in like the way that you need to, but you can certainly connect to what feels right to you and put that energy outward and positivity, rather than kind of, I think a lot of people are feeling, which is like anxious, depressed, inward, all this energy circulating, not being released, all this tension. It's like ways to like release that and to try and remove the shackles so you can fulfill your potential as a human being, because we all have this incredible life force potential, you know, really, really, it's amazing. You think, I always think of the people who have left so much legacy, positive legacy in this world. Imagine if they were hanging out going, oh, like, yeah, just, you know, I can't do anything. I'm just going to like, you know, go eat pizza. And I'm not having a go. Like, I've eaten a lot of pizza too and distracted myself for many years, you know, and I still do. But it's like there's one human can do so much when you look at the ripple effect of what can happen. So, you know, I'm so far away from the old me in that sense of feeling powerless. Feeling powerless and feeling like shit about stuff. It's like, okay, of course my heart still feels things. Of course, I can get wrapped up in all of that. But I find ways of going, well, you've got a choice. You want to spend your energy sat here in that, or do you want to, even if it's literally, do you want to just go and have a conversation with someone? That's how I pop myself out of it. It's not even about a haircut now. It's like, go and have a conversation with someone. It might not be that guy on the street. It might be like anybody. People, as part of this, like the broader stuff, people have been going into senior citizens' homes and having lunch with people who don't have any family who come and see them, you know, going to volunteer their time in like rehabilitation, like, you know, groups and spending time with, or volunteering time with younger people. You know, I take so much from the time I spend with the elders in our society, which I have, again, a tremendous amount of respect for, the people who've been here for many more years than I have, but also my little nephews who are like 4 and 5 and have this magic in their eyes because they're seeing the world for what it is, which is pure beauty and pure curiosity. And so like, yeah, however you spend your time, it's like, just, you got to find ways to shake off the bullshit and the helplessness and kind of move into an expression of love that exists within all of us. That's my spiel.
I agree. And you know, when you read the statistics, Joshua, of how many people suffer in depression and people that can't move and people that feel paralyzed, and people that feel lonely, like that they actually have no friends, when in fact the reality is we have like over 2 billion people in this world. How could you feel lonely when we are so many here? So there's something wrong. And I think that your message of like putting yourself out there, you know, the reason why you feel lonely and alone is because you don't go out. If you go out, love is going to find you. The love, you know, it's like when you talk to a stranger and the stranger tells you a story about that person met their wives, you feel that love that they had. And then he tells you that the wife died, and then you feel that grief again. But all of a sudden, you're not alone in your own darkness anymore. You're like, you're feeling something. You felt the love that stranger felt with his wife that is gone. And I just want to inspire everybody. And I really do. That's one of the things that I love about what you do. And I think it was what saved you. And now listening to your story, is that you stopped feeling your own pains and decided to like put it out and share what's out and feel it, whatever it is, because it definitely will be better than what you've been feeling.
100%.
You know, it definitely will be better. I mean, you're going to feel other pains and other issues. Yes, but it's different. And it helps you, right? It helps you just breathe and everybody that feels stuck at home, that is probably listening to this, go out and smile at someone and see what happens. It's
Yeah,
like we lost
exactly.
that magic.
This is so true, and it's so small, but it's like that's where I can sometimes get really emotional, because it's so, it is so sad in many ways when you think of how many people are probably in the house feeling so lonely, but within the same street.
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, we can, but it makes sense though, because I tell you what, in America, or similar, and definitely not in all parts of Europe, but similar in the UK, we're not in a place anymore where we feel comfortable going and knocking on a neighbor's door and going, hey, like, can I borrow some sugar or whatever it was, or
Yes,
definitely not saying like, hey, can I come in should we have a coffee together? Like, what's
it's
going
true.
on? Just sharing a bit of time and conversation. We're all like, who are you? Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm doing my thing and I'm in the middle of watching this. But underneath it is still the loneliness. We might have the TV on, we might have this on, or all the distractions, but we forgot how to just be. And then I do say, well, something that came up for me then as well, I think it's important to share, which is you've got to find, I think, your medicine. And I think your medicine looks like very different for each person. For some people, yeah, like I think this service and connection that we're talking about is an integral part of life, a huge chunk of life. But then there's also these other ways that you can find. You have to do the self work to like
Mhm.
to heal on you. Because I also, for me, so my journey, like I think I was so busy doing this because the way that this happened, it kind of went viral as well. So for the first like few years, it went crazy because there was this BBC social media thing, and it got like 40 million views or something
Oh, wow.
online. And like everything just kicked off with do something for nothing. I started to give talks about this and do this in different places. And I think I was so busy for so many years doing this, and I was taking and receiving and giving so much. And it was like this beautiful circle of I was getting so much from it, like we spoke about. But I also think for a long time I did ignore really looking within myself for a while on that journey. And
Mhm.
up until about, yeah, really it's honestly the nice, like the last 3 years where I've
Oh.
really started to do the self work that I've needed to do. And for me, that's happened through, it can happen in many different ways for people. I really believe in therapy. I really believe in whether that's arts, music,
Mhm.
or sports or exercise, or, like literally speaking to somebody. I think that's so, so important to share. And oftentimes somebody who's objective, because it's important to share with your friends, but I do believe in like, what that can look like for everybody. But for me, it was actually like plant medicine. Like I don't know, I don't want to, it's another subject, but
Mhm.
it's I started more recently working with ayahuasca and working
Oh.
with different plant medicines down in Peru. And it's taught me so much because, I've gone into places where I go down to the Amazon, and I've been down to Peru with this family of Shipibo healers there. And part of being in like what's called a plant dieta is basically going into isolation yourself for weeks. And it taught me so much, the first experience with that,
Mhm.
because you shed so much and you shed so many layers. And also like a big part of this healing is removing blockages and being able to see your life from another vantage point and being able to do work that's really quite deep inner work. But the reason I talk about that is that's not everybody's path. It's not everyone's cup of tea, and I've actually started to like help out with retreats and help to facilitate myself now in that medium and that kind of format. But it's everybody has like, people's medicine is going to be different. But yeah, as well as the service, as well as the going out and giving yourself, you can't ignore what you need as well. Because I think that
Yeah.
how we're really going to evolve and how we're really going to transform and how we're really going to make a change in this world, my belief is our personal transformation. Because the more people who can really kind of transform in that way to be connected to what we've covered and what we spoke about here, which is like that authentic version of their being, that, the most creative expression of themselves, the most authentic version of themselves, that has a tremendous ripple on other people in their life. And that is what creates, I think, just a swell of like a new mindset, for the future. And I think the difference now perhaps to when there was movements like this in, say, the 60s or 70s, is we have so much more to be able to back this up of how we can integrate through to be able to apply these things into our life. So yeah, I mentioned that just because, it might not be everyone's thing going down to, the Amazon to work with different plant medicines, but it might be that you're an ultra marathon runner. It might be that you're like an artist and you work in that way. I just think there's an important thing to address there, which is just like finding things that make you feel connected to you as well.
Yeah, it's a connection. The more you connect yourself, you can connect to others, and it's all connected at the same time, and it allows you to do the work that you do and to a level that you never even imagined. I mean, you've gone this far, and who knows where you're going, but I'm really excited to see it. So
I don't know.
It's good not to know.
I don't need to know. In fact, I don't want to know. I feel good, and honestly, I'm super happy with these moments too as well. What this has brought me really is friends in other places, people who, you attract similar people, care about similar things. Yeah. So what you put out there, you become a magnet to those things too. Back. So I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for people helping out to try and get this message out there. Also, I can't tell you the amount of times Instagram for me is a very healthy place, which is kind of extraordinary because I just I use it like a megaphone or like an amplifier when I had a guitar. It's like, okay, I talk from the heart and I write from the heart and I document moments that are real and important, but I don't attach myself and my self-worth into this app. And it feels so much healthier. And also it's been a place where people reach out to me and they want to pick me up from airports when I turn up to a certain town. People have put me up in their house, and I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff if it wasn't for all of the favors along the way and all the kindness I've been shown. So yeah, people are amazing. And it's amazing because social media, for all its flaws and for all the crazy, negative sides of things, it can be somewhere that can be used for some good stuff too.
Of course. I think when you put something out, people want to support it. And I feel like we lost that hope, that people think that we all want to tear you down, but no, it's we really empower each other because we need it. It's a thing. It's Joshua. This has been such a beautiful conversation.
Thank you.
I really wanted to thank you, first of all, for sharing your story with me, with us, for being part of this beautiful movement mindset that you call it. Do something for nothing, but underneath it's everything what you're receiving. And for just doing that service. It's a service that just by watching your page changes your life. I feel like every time you pass a post, you get to know you a little bit better, and you get to know some stranger that I might never ever meet, but it has an impact. And I always feel very inspired by humans like you that just put themselves out there for the good of all, and without any expectations other than love. And it's just a beautiful message that I wanted to amplify everywhere. And because I think that, for those of you lonely, that think that you're lonely, you're not. Just put yourself out and you will find a world that is just powerful, and you will feel powerful. Because I feel like one of the reasons why you feel lonely and depressed is because you are not using your potential. You don't think you have it, but you do. But you will only know that if you put yourself out there. And it's it's a good message as well for people who might be listening and they might be thinking, well, that's great, well,
but
maybe not for me.
Or maybe they're thinking, hey, I've got a full-time job and I can't go out and give my time in this way. But remember, it's just a phone call to a friend as well. You know what it's like when someone calls you out the blue you haven't spoke to in 3 months, and you're like, oh, hey, what's going on? And they're like, yeah, I'm just seeing what's up.
Just saying hi.
And if it's just saying hi, you're like, oh, that's cool. You were thinking of me. It's like there's someone in your corner, and you never know when it could be a friend, someone in your life who's just like, you haven't checked in with for a while. Like we know, like you mentioned, we're in a bit of a loneliness epidemic. So I think it's an important message, it can just be within your grasp on your phone, picking up the phone to somebody. So thank you. And it's been honestly a real pleasure speaking to you. And I hope we get to meet one day. But thanks for putting the word out. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And everybody, please share our stories, subscribe to our little shows so we can expand and keep bringing superheroes like like
Definitely.
Joshua.
And you know what? A little shameless plug as well. Like a good way to get to know more of my work is the book, because the book's
Yes.
out everywhere now. So
Can you show us?
there you go.
Yes.
Yes. So this is like a series of stories of different people I've met in all kinds of places, different cities. But yeah, so you can check it out. It's called Do Something About It. Yeah.
Yes. All right.